Good morning, Greene County. Hey, welcome to our first session of the financial huddles, where we're going to actually try and run through some numbers and share the wisdom of the crowd to talk about this stuff. While we prepared for this one, we learned a few things to help us change the next one to make that one even better. And hopefully we get feedback from you guys today and we can make these better and better as we go along. This is going to be
for a good start.
I think Tina said she'll be doing that oh, no, wait, this was for Easter. Tina says she can't spend 5 hours a month doing this. Yeah, there's cookies up front and Tina baked them with love. So that's the best ingredients, but otherwise there's what in there?
There's it's Reese's peanut butter cup cookies and M&M cookies.
There we go. So most everyone else got cookies. First off, I'd like to show you guys the new Budget Office website and to thank IS for putting it together and better organizing our information. So when you go to our website, you're going to see it laid out this way. So we've got our past budgets, including the top one there, which is the 2023 appropriation level. So that shows the new way of looking at the account level of appropriation instead of every account, our budget. The next column is the monitoring. So every week, Monday morning, we'll be putting up a new monitoring report. And that's actually what we go through in our financial huddles. And so this financial huddle, we sent out an email a little over a week ago. And so we're going to be going through the 2023-03-20 report. So everything that we're looking at here is going to be available online. So if you want to check out something that comes up during the meeting, when you're back at your desk, you'll be able to just go to our website and pull up that file and see it. And then vacancy analysis, that's the report that Mike sends out every 2 weeks as soon as as soon as the payroll posts. And so we'll also be going through the March 4th file in today's huddle, because that's the best way of looking at how we're doing on personnel. And then we also have 3 other categories: projects, our monthly sales tax form, and then normal forms for doing budget adjustments, whether it's the emergency procurement form or the budget adjustment form. So we just wanted to thank IS for getting that organized for us, and just show you that what we're pulling up today is just 2 of these files. So Mike, if you want to go ahead and pull up the monitoring file for March 20th. We have a little bit of explanation, blah, 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 but we'll just go on down to the first level here. And so what this report is showing is that operations, well, through March 27th, we've had 79 days. And so our percent of pace throughout the year is 21.64%. So anything highlighted orange is going to be something that is ahead of pace. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a problem. It's just, let's look for an explanation. And the way that we've set our budget out, we have personnel, operations, and capital for each office within each fund. What we've figured out that's going to be changed for next time is that our personnel percentage here doesn't really match up with what you see on the vacancy report. And that's because we're just figuring a pace based on number of days that we're in. We've created a personnel pace that's going to match up with the number of posted payrolls for whatever download date we have. So in this particular case, posted payrolls are like 19.24% compared to our 21.64% in operations. So we're going to have some personnel that show up on this form that is over that 19.24 and ought to be orange, but they're going to end up being blank right now. But in the future, when we change this pace of personnel, what you see on this will light up orange, and it will kind of match up with what you see on the vacancy analysis when we go through those. And so those 2 forms will match up as far as pointing out potential issues to look at. But let's just run through these numbers, and I'm just pulling straight from the email that I sent you guys. And so when we're going down through this, we have no issues showing up in the 31st. Mike, if you want to just scroll a little bit, that nothing showing up in the 31st. The first thing that we have as an example to talk about is operations within the assessment fund. And right there, that's showing at 38.3% compared to our 21.64. Brent, do you want to talk about that at all, or? Great.
So, it's early part of the year, and as you all know, we got some beautiful mail from me back in January. That's a big chunk. There's about $60,000 postage and mail, and then also some fees for forms, as well as we also had some software maintenance purchased. So those things come out early in the year, so it was high on our budget. But as the year, you'll see that number back in the line.
Yep, absolutely. Operations includes contracts, training, travel, maintenance, supplies, other. And what you'll see, he mainly 3 accounts, exactly what he said. Personal property lists, 98% funded. That's because those go out. They're printed, they go out. Postage, 58% funded. 2 main postage things that you do, and one of them's done. And then capital maintenance, 64%. And that's that IAS World and Oracle contract that takes up the big portion of that. And so even though he's showing at 38.3% and it's ahead of pace, some of the billing that we do doesn't happen throughout the year. And so that's what we're talking about here, is just understanding our numbers and realizing that, well, we're ahead of pace, but it's what we expect to happen. So that's assessment. What do we got? This is the next there. Okay, so we have Fund 251, which is a county clerk fund, but you'll see there's a D after that. And so that's a discretionary fund. We don't talk about that stuff here. That's for that office holder to manage and take care of. There's always good reasons behind that, but that's a discretionary fund, so that's up to that office holder. We show it for informational purposes. No reason for us to talk about it here. However, if an office holder would like us to change the budget on this, just send us an email and we'll change the budget, because it's your discretionary fund. We only show it for informational purposes. So if you don't want something showing up orange or red, send us a budget adjustment as in form of an email, and we'll make that adjustment. And then it won't show up in these meetings. But like I said, we just have it there for monitoring purposes. So next thing we have is Fund 101 Commission and Operations. And I guess that kind of falls on me to talk about. I have notes here somewhere. There we go. So in Fund 101, oh, no, I'm sorry. We're only looking at the top 10 items. And so 22.3% didn't make the top 10. So we're very close to that 21.64%. So there's no reason for us to really just talk about something just that small off. So 101 is doing fine there. Actually, 101 capital is at 25.8, and that didn't make the cut either. So that takes us to Road and Bridge. Their percentages didn't make the cut. But is Crystal in here, or Crystal online? She's online. Crystal had an explanation for everybody to hear on the capital if you want to hear it. Crystal, are you there? Oh, we have to unmute. My bad. Okay. Well, for Road and Bridge in the capital line, one of the major things. Good morning, Crystal.
Hi, Jeff. Sorry about that. I was locked on mute.
We didn't plan this out, but I was wondering if you wanted to go ahead and talk about your municipal paving to explain
sure.
the.
Yeah. So we are kind of ahead on that category, only because with our statutory paving by statute, we have to give each one of the cities a certain amount of the taxes back every year that we collect. And so we go ahead and we make those payments in February or March of every year. So, and the amount to the Springfield is just over $2 million alone. So we've gone ahead and made those payments. So that's where we're kind of ahead of spending on that line.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's not capital, that's operations. And so, yeah, they pay well over $2 million out towards the beginning of the year on statutory paving.
Yes.
And so that's, we talk about a lot of our distributions, but I think a lot of times we miss that part of our sales tax revenues gets shared automatically through state statute over $2 million with our surrounding municipalities. let's go on down, that's Road and Bridge. So here we go. The first one for us to really talk about is a commission line in our E911 fund. And we're at 98% of funding on our capital, which, there it is, 96.1. Yeah, that's why I have this sheet up here, because the print is still small. And that's the thing is with capital, and this is one of the things we're going to change also for next month. Instead of having anything ahead of pace in a capital line show up as orange, we're only going to show capital if it's over 100% and is red. Because we're going to find, what we found out this time is we have a lot of capital lines, and basically when we get capital approved, we want to start the ordering process early so that we make sure we get it in place this year. And what this is looking at is requisitions and purchase orders in addition to paid invoices. So all of our capital is really going to be ahead of pace at this time. So what we want to do is just send out a reminder to everybody to look at your capital. And if you think you're going to be over, go ahead and request that budget adjustment. But we don't need to hash what we have here, where they've ordered furniture and phones that they're 96% of what they were going to order early, just for us to say, but we don't anticipate them being over. However, in this particular case, they also have about $350,000 worth of contingency in Fund 204, and we do believe that they might end up with some capital spending that's over. We just don't know the volume. So this one might have a budget adjustment in the future. Mike, you want to run to the next? There we go. So that takes us to the LEST fund. And when we look at the LEST fund, we also have a capital line there. That's 97.6%. And that's really the vehicles for the sheriff's office, prosecuting attorney, and resource management being put on order with a general PO. And we don't anticipate that being over at this time. But obviously, as some of those orders come in, we'll see how those amounts go, and there might have to be an adjustment there. But right now, we don't see an adjustment happening at that point. So that takes us. So Shelter for Victims Fund. Okay. So this is Fund 239, the Shelter for Victims Fund. And this is a really neat fund because we get money from the circuit clerk's office from court fees. And then we get some fees from the recorder's office. And then the treasurer's office tries to get, creates an opportunity for people who don't want their jury trial fees to be able to donate those to the Shelter for Victims. So we have a few different revenue sources, but what happens here traditionally is we give about $25,000 at the first of the year to Harmony House. And then on July 1, we give the next 25,000. And so our budget's 50,000 for the year, but it only goes out in two payments, one at the first of the year and one at the beginning of the second half of the year. So being at 50% is exactly what we'd expect to be. And then that takes us to the school pass-through fund, which it isn't large enough. And then we get to the bond fund. So you'll see here we have a budget for bonds and operations of about $18 million. And we've already spent $9.7 million. We have 7 bonds that we make payments on. We've made payments through this period on 4 of them. And all 4 of these are our largest bonds, and all 4 of these are principal and interest. So later in the year, when these bonds come up again, we'll only be paying the interest. So for us being at 53.7%, that's really where we expect to be. So there's nothing unusual going on there. And then, so that takes care of assessor and commission. The next area where we actually have something that comes up is sheriff's office, I believe. Do we have Jeff here? Jeff Basham, are you online or? Are you with us, Jeff? Okay. I made a few notes. Obviously, I don't know exactly what's going on in the sheriff's office with some of these things. Is Jeff online? Okay. So he'll probably buzz in soon. Let me go to-
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Sir, thank you, sir.
Good morning.
Morning, Jeff. Thank you, sir. The first item that I believe that we would have anything to talk about here is in Sheriff's Fund 242, which is the grants fund. We're showing a difference from what was budgeted to what we have either as requisitions, purchase orders, or spending in operations and capital. So would you like to talk about that a little bit, Jeff?
Sure. The one thing, the capital, there's a requisition in there that's not actually capital, so that one will come out, but it'll just move up to operations, so that line will just be higher. But with the grant fund, one of the things we run into when we're working on the budget in the fall is we don't always know what grants are going to be available the following year, or the amounts, if we have some sense of what the grant will be. So we get into the year, and obviously we want to take advantage of every grant that we can. So the number sometimes turns out to be higher than we thought it might have been in the fall before, which is a good thing, because all this in operations and capital in the grant fund is 100% funded by grants. So it's good that that number is actually more than we had planned.
Terrific. And so what we'll do is we'll work with the sheriff's office, the budget, we'll work with Jeff, and we'll try and get a budget adjustment put together to where we're reflecting better the revenues that we get from grants and the expenses that are going to be paid by grants, to where this red ends up going away and the numbers get put to where we actually think they're going to be. The next item that I think we would have to talk about, Jeff, is maybe we can go back to LEST2, or I mean LEST, and just talk about the capital there, because I think that's at 52.2%. And I believe that's just a requisition that's hit the system for handheld communication devices. Oh, is he muted again? Okay, so that's all
Okay.
that is a requisition, and it's
Yeah,
just
I'm back, Jeff.
So Jeff, we have 52.2% on capital items in Fund 206. Obviously, that's a capital item, so there's no pace of spending. Do you guys anticipate having to go over that line with this level of spending,
No.
or?
Not at this time, no. It's like you said before, most of the capital spending, we try to get the orders in as early as possible. A lot of the equipment has long lead times, longer in the last couple of years, so it's just a matter of getting those things in early.
Okay. Then we have just two other categories, the DARE operations and canine operations, two different funds.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about
Yeah.
those?
Sure, yeah. Their spending is almost always early. About the only thing they spend money on is their DARE graduations, which are always in the spring. So most of our DARE spending is finished by mid-year. And then canine, that's a bit different. We hadn't planned on using that fund at all. Most of our canine operations are now funded through a nonprofit, but we had some money come in that needed to go into that fund. So now we have a balance in that fund again, and we're going to go ahead and spend that down. And again, like you mentioned before, this will be a budget adjustment thing.
Yeah, and I think, did you tell me that you guys do some like regionalized training on canines? Is that what is going into this now?
Yeah, it's not that we have intended to do this necessarily, but some of the agencies around the area wanted to get involved in some of our dog training camps. And we said, okay, we're happy to have you do that, but we're going to have to charge you for it. And so we've had several agencies get involved in those. And that's funds coming back to the county that needs to go into a county fund, not back through the nonprofit. So that's why it's in there. So,
but thanks to the sheriff's office, the use of canines in regional policing programs is going to increase, I guess, right? So that's a real feather in our cap here at Greene County.
Yeah, it's good that we can help out other agencies, smaller agencies especially.
Terrific. That's really what we have on the operations side. of things. Anybody have any questions about what we've talked about so far? And again, the file's there for people to look at. Anything that anybody want to share about their office or how things are going? Okay. Mike, if you want to close out of this file, and let's go to the vacancy analysis. And so on the vacancy analysis, here, Mike's put this together. And a good way of looking at this, we have each office holder listed. And we have the GR fund in one column, LEST in one column. But then if you go down below, you'll see, well, I'm sorry, Mike, on that same part that you're at, you'll see Commission Road and Bridge. So that's Fund 201, and it has grayed out areas for GR and LEST. But you'll see the Road and Bridge number, and then you have Assessor the same way, Fund 202, with their number there. So right now, you'll see the assessor has vacancy savings in addition to planned vacancy. So their actual vacancy rate is much higher than $106,000, but they have vacancy in excess of budgeted vacancy of $106,000. So they've probably had a rough time getting all the work done that they need to get done because that's a pretty excessive vacancy. When you look at Road and Bridge, they have $244,000 more in vacancy than budgeted vacancy. When you look at GR overall, we're showing a total of $53,198 more in spending on personnel than what our budgeted personnel is minus our budgeted vacancy. So we're over in GR. When we look at these lines, you'll see that the red, the collector's office at 3.4 was $47 over. And so in the collector's office, one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that they start the year in tax season. And so that's when things are hot and heavy and they need the overtime. They need the extra help to come in and work. And so if we looked at a history of this, you see that they've been working down that spending over pace. And actually, the most recent one that we have, they're now a positive number. So then really the only item that we have showing here is the sheriff's office, and they're about $283,000 in spending over budgeted personnel minus budgeted vacancy. And 283,000 obviously is a very large number for us, but when you compare it to sheriff's payroll, it's a little bit smaller percentage than what that 283 kind of jumps out at you at. When we've looked at this, it looks like the majority of that is jail non-grant overtime. That's the majority chunk of that 283,000. Jeff, do you have anything that you'd like to mention about jail overtime in GR and LEST?
Yeah, it is jail overtime, just as you mentioned. About 95% of it anyway goes toward the jail. We've got, as of yesterday, we have about 55 open positions in the jail and sheriff's office combined. That equates to about 4,150 hours that we're short in people right now. The overtime that we've been running since the beginning of the year, we've been averaging about 3,600 hours per week. So we're basically just covering open shifts. Understanding that this is kind of a big number. The jail has put some additional guidelines in place as far as overtime and some additional limits. That was effective as of this pay period. So hopefully next week when we start seeing the reports, we'll have some good results from that. But we'll see how that goes and then react from there and see what else needs to be done. Obviously, we have to balance the need for overtime savings with the need to safely run operations. So
This is showing us another one of the costs of a vacancy is if you have time that has to happen and you don't have the personnel on staff to take care of it, then you're paying time and a half for somebody to stay and do it. And so I think to some degree, we're seeing some of that happen here. And so that's another cost that we have in vacancy. And so overall in GR, we're about 53,198 over in our spending, which is a concern, of course. It's good to hear that the jail is putting some parameters in place to help address this. LEST, you'll see again, we're at a positive number of 9,318 overall. But again, the sheriff's office jail vacancy is hurting that. But that's one side of the vacancy cost. Dan's here, and I told him I wouldn't put him on the spot. But when you look at GR, you can see that the PA has $66,110,000 in vacancy savings beyond budgeted vacancy in GR, and $85,865 in vacancy savings beyond budgeted vacancy in LEST. And so where overtime is a cost that the sheriff's office is seeing, Dan, you have another cost that you experience with those large vacancy numbers, right?
In terms of training, is that what you're doing?
Well, I was getting a training and the work just getting done, right?
So we're down 10 attorneys right now, which is the bulk of that vacancy that you see there. Just to give you a little bit of background, after the 2017 tax passed, we were at full staff with all those new positions. Pandemic, like everyone now, we've had some turnover in the recruiting cycle for new attorneys. Mostly what I'm able to hire. We very rarely get experienced folks apply. So I have, out of those 10 vacancies, I have 5 third-year law students with accepted positions. 4 or 5 offers outstanding right now. So if we're lucky, we will fill those positions in August, and then they'll pass the bar in September, and we'll have new attorneys. The downside of that is all. But other use to be making those funds, like I have a paralegal right now who's in an attorney slot. They keep doing, I'm still trying to get some workload out of that. And then also I use that money for some of our interns to bring in from law school, try to get some of the work done while we're recruiting and trying to hire.
Thank you, Dan. Another thing that you'll see on this report is the top 2 lines, court/juvenile and auditor both have asterisks behind them. What we have here, what we typically show is the savings, the vacancy in excess of budgeted vacancy. The courts and juvenile and the auditor's office don't have budgeted vacancy. However, we do.
Sure.
Vacancy.
You know, we got this ARPA grant. Is it for radios in the jail? Do you know? We got this whole brand new word, but the word doesn't say what we got.
There we go. We also have, but we have figures that the budget office has figured for vacancy that we show in our savings number overall. And so what we've done in this report is we've taken those figures up and netted them. So when you look at courts and the auditor's office, they actually have more vacancy than what's being shown here. But obviously you can look at courts and they've have $65,000 worth in vacancies shown here, knowing that they have even more. Kylie, what kind of challenges are you guys facing with? Yeah.
We don't have, it's been 19 months since we've had a qualified trained.
And how are you compensating for being shorthanded like this?
We're using our temporary staff and our other, I mean, we do have some overtime being worked by our other full-time bailiffs, but that's
Yeah.
the only way we're keeping it moving.
So these reports kind of show that we have some challenges that we're facing right now in the county, and it's just a way of looking at the numbers. If you see a big positive number there, maybe it's actually not a positive situation. 2 minutes? Okay. So that's kind of what we have and that we would like to go through. I know we've also kind of talked about revenues, and Mike has put together some pretty good revenue information. We haven't fully vetted it yet, so we didn't present it. We're looking at, like we have expenses as personnel, operations, and capital. We're looking at dividing revenues into taxes, intergovernmental receivables, and then other/operations. And just to kind of summarize revenues, because that's an important part of this picture that we haven't addressed. When we look at GR, overall expenditures are 18.6% right now compared to 21.64% pace. our revenues are at 31.9%. Taxes are at 32.8. Collectors commission comes in very hot and heavy early in the year. They're at 89.8% of budget on collectors commission. Interest is another interesting category. We're at 50% of interest already for budget in GR. So that's really good. Licenses, fees, other, those are all below 20, so they're a little slow in pace, but I imagine as spring and summer kick in, a lot of those fees will pick up. Road and Bridge, they're at 34.4% of revenues. They're only running low on some of their government reimbursements. When we look at assessment, that's another one that comes in early. So they've got 82.1% of revenues already in. That's mainly the state of Missouri giving them their reimbursement. And then you get a pretty fee heavy early in the year too. And then when we look at LEST, we're at 24.3% of revenues compared to 24.7% of spending. That's mainly the capital spend. And the only area where we're low on LEST is state revenue reimbursements. But all in all, our revenues seem to be ahead of pace and our expenditures seem to be under control. But we're here to monitor our expenditures and see where we go. But the county's in really good, strong shape right now, and it's all because of you guys. And I think that's what we have today, unless anybody wants to keep us late. Thank you all, appreciate it.